Awesome. So the game has loaded. I'm actually going to slow it down a little bit. So obviously in the actual game, we don't see other people's hands, but in the replay, you get to see what was in people's hands. So we didn't win the die roll, but we're going second. This hand, per the primer, is keepable because we have a Wall of Omens, and luckily we also have a turn 2 acceleration and a Jeweled Lotus. So I'm going to speed up a bit. Essentially the play is we're going to fetch for our Sacred Foundry, um, and then we're going to fetch for our plateau, play the Talisman of Conviction, and then after that play a Wall of Omens. So that's what you're going to see here. And again, this game is not exactly a Goldfish game, because again, Goldfishing is just when you're playing the deck without opponents, basically, just to see how it plays. However, the interaction that the opponents played against us in this game was light enough for me to consider it a sort of like a Goldfish test. So, like I said, we fetch for Sacred Foundry, Plateau, play a Talisman. Now we play the Wall of Omens. Wall of Omens off the land, and then those two plus a Jewel Lotus lets us cast Hofri. And then the play here is to cast Recruiter of the Guard. And one of the challenges of this is, what do you get with Recruiter of the Guard in a situation like this? You don't see any majorly huge threats. Honestly, it's hard to say. And I'm trying to remember what I actually did here. I believe the goal was to get Stoneforge Mystic, and then get the Skull Clamp, because Skull Clamp plus a sack outlet in this deck is nuts, and you're going to see that on the next turn, on my next turn, just how nuts this deck goes. This game is a turn 5 kill, by the way, but you're going to see just how nuts this deck is with a sack outlet, Hofri, and Skull Clamp in play, and this is why we run Stoneforge Mystic, even though the only target in the deck is Skullclamp, because Skullclamp is literally that good. So here you're going to see, I'm going to speed it up, because he was lagging a little bit, so yeah, we took some damage. He plays his Profane Tutor. He Skull Clamps, and then he passes. Actually, now I think about it, this might not have been a turn 5 kill. Was it turn 5 kill? It might have been a turn 6 kill. But still, it's pretty close. So here, I believe we equip the Skull Clamp onto the Stoneforge, right? Okay, so yeah, and then we're gonna sack it to Ashnod's Altar to float to colorless. He attempts a Generous Gift, our Hofri. We Deflecting Swat, take out his Skull Clamp. I think here he makes the beginner mistake of thinking that he can equip Skull Clamp at instant speed to his Carrion. And I tell him that he can't equip at instant speed, and so we end up taking out his Skull Clamp instead. Right, yeah, so this turn is not actually the turn that I end up winning. It won't be turn 5, I believe. It's actually our turn 6, but turn 5 is, this turn is when I demonstrate just how insane this deck is with these. So we've drawn 2 cards. We get another Stoneforge Mystic token. There are no targets in the deck, because again the only target is Skull Clamp. We can use one of the colorless mana generated by Ashnod's to equip the Skull Clamp on Stoneforge Mystic token, sack it again, getting us net positive, drawing us 2 more cards. And then at some point what we do is we use the Skull Clamp and the Recruiter to get a Dockside Extortionist. But I believe what actually happens here is we use our Ashnod's Altar floating mana to cast Elishnorn Mother of Machines, which is going to double all of our ETBs. And so you'll notice here that the opponent has a Swords of Plowshares in hand. Most of what we're doing can be done at instant speed, um, except not obviously not the Skull Clamp equipment, but um, if he attempted to Swords to Plowshare us here, I probably would have just sacrificed something to Ashnod's altar to float colorless and then use the Teferi's protection. Um, but there is a point at which he could safely swords the Hofri, uh, but that would probably be near the end of this turn, and I'm not sure it would have mattered that much. So we Skull Clamp the Recruiter of the Guard. Elish Nor Mother Machines lets us tutor two cards, two creatures. And we end up getting, I'm trying to remember, you'll see it here in a moment, but is it Lord? No, okay, Dockside was one, I remember that one, and then, okay, Karmic Guide, just in case we need to recur something later. And yeah, as of this video, technically Elishnorn Mother Machines has not been released yet, but again, people play with spoilers on here all the time, just to test decks, and so that's just, no one really complains that much about it. Oftentimes a new spoiler is released and then people put it in their decks on here, and we're able to test it out and see how good that card actually is before it even releases. So yeah, and I'm tapping these because I forgot to tap for Authority of the Console. So we Dockside here. He has 1, 2, 3. He has 6, or there's 6 total that we get off Dockside, except Elishnorn doubles it, so we get 12. Essentially, we're going off. So let's speed this up a little bit. Yeah, so we get 12. Play the Dranith. We play Magus the Moon. And then we play our Pulse Mage Advocate. We have enough mana for the Teferi's protection so that when he whenever he essentially blows up the board, we Teferi's protection. This guy could have swords us in response, swords something in response, but I'm not sure how much it would have mattered that much. And this is another thing about this deck, even without Teferi's protection, if you played that board wipe, yes, we would lose all our creatures, but Hofri would make tokens of them, and so essentially everyone else would lose their board, but we would have spirit token copies of all of our creatures. And so it's almost like the board wipe didn't even hit us, and that's just the natural strength that Hofri has. This deck runs a lot of the red counter spells that hose blue cards specifically, and that's just because we're susceptible to mass wipe effects. And stuff like Cyclonic Rift, and so we have to have Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast to deal with those. You'll notice I did miss a trigger here. I hit him, but I didn't make any tokens with Professional Facebreaker, and I should have. Again, hitting the life game player is usually something I do just because of stuff like Aetherflux. Now I didn't know he had Aetherflux in hand, but I have lost games where I just, for whatever reason, didn't hit the life game player, and then he's at over 50 life, drops the Aetherflux, and he Aetherfluxes me just because I have like a sack outlet, and those were games where I wasn't going off hard like I am in this game. And so here, I'm not sure if you followed what happened, but we made a bunch of tokens after we sacrificed the Dockside, where we equipped the Dockside with Skull Clamp, sacrificed to Ashnods. We made a Dockside token. Elishnorn doubles the ETB, so we made like 20 treasure tokens, dumped our hand on the board. We're going to gamble for Gift of Immortality, which goes infinite with Sun Titan. You can check the primer for that one. And then all we need after we get Gift on the Sun Titan is a way to find the Altar of Dementia, and that could be something like Goblin Engineer, or even I think what I draw into is Enlightened Tutor. But so I think I played the Loran here just so I can. Loran here also can be used to draw cards. So let's say whenever I do play the Valakut here, I didn't hit anything. You can sacrifice Loran to the Ashnod's Altar to get a Spirit Token copy that is haste, and then tap that Spirit Token copy to draw a card. You and someone else can draw a card, and you just pick like the weakest player at the table to draw with you. And usually you're pretty safe about that. Now in a balanced pod, it may be hard to pick a target, but that's again just part of the complexity of the deck. And so what we end up doing is, yeah, we play the Solvent, we play all our mana rocks, um, and then we're going to play the Gift of Immortality onto the Sun Titan, setting up 2/3 of the Altar Dementia / Goblin Bombardment combo that you can see in the primer. And then we use 3 treasure tokens to play Valakut Awakening and dump this whole hand to the bottom. And that's kind of what I talked about in my previous deck overview video, where we can draw the wrong half of the deck, or in this case we have a bunch of lands after all that. And so here again we drew another combo piece, but we drew a tutor. The Enlightened Tutor gets us the Altar of Dementia, or it could have gotten us the Goblin Bombardment as well. Main reason why I like the Altar of Dementia rather than Goblin Bombardment is just because they can Teferi's Protection in response, whereas Altar of Dementia, I guess no, it doesn't matter. Ignore what I'm just about to say. I like the Altar of Dementia just because mill. There are many ways to prevent damage. Let me just put it like that. Teferi's Protection does not actually prevent an altar loop, but there are ways to prevent damage loops. There's less ways to prevent mill loops, and so we had tutored for the Altar Dimension to the top of the deck. We had Skull Clamped a creature and then sacked it Astronaut's Altar, allowing us to draw 2. I think we actually drew 3 because we or drew 4 actually. Wall of Omens is what we sacked. And Elish Norn doubles his enter the battlefield trigger, so we actually drew 2 when he entered, and then 2 from the Skull Clamp, which drew us into the Astronaut's Altar. Or not Astronaut's Altar, the Altar of Dementia. And then we're casting the Altar of Dementia here, and that pretty much seals the deal for the game. So yeah, this was not exactly a Goldfish game, but with there are essentially 2 pieces of interaction played throughout this game, and it showcases that we are able to kill the table on turn 6, because again, Skull Clamp and Astronaut's Altar and Hofri is just nuts, so nuts that we will run a Stoneforge Mystic solely for the purpose of getting Skull Clamp. So this is the Goldfish-ish game. I will cover the more interactive, higher power pod, more evenly balanced pod game in the next video.